I said to him, well, look, if the Wobblies got a fair hearing in the press and the media and the workers, I'd learn more about them. And he was an old man already. He went like this, you know. He says, oh, they knew about the Wobblies. Believe me, they all knew about the Wobblies. They didn't want to. That's it. He meant the working class. In the final analysis, they didn't want to, because they had plenty of opportunities to join. And so he got to be quite cynical about it. But he himself was never cynical. He was always into it. He was not cynical that way. But he was truthful. I think that it's a new generation. The nature of work has changed. You know, in the old days, you could go to a lumber camp, and the men stayed in camps, and you could organize them this way. Today, it's not so. You can't do that. And also, the nature of work has changed. I mean, where do you put somebody who works as a who works for Apple as some kind of a computer technician? Well, how do you organize them? I think you should. They should join the Wobblies. But would they? You know, this 100 years ago, a lot of this stuff. It's so hard for me to answer the question. I will say this, that I feel that the Wobblies have been misrepresented historically, because if you read most books, they say that the heyday was up to World War I, and then they had the mass trial that I mentioned, and after that they were in decline. It's not true. It's factually untrue. They had over 100,000 members in the 1920s, 1923. I think they had a huge split that took place in 1924. Tremendously broke into two wobbly camps, and that was terrible. And the membership fell out the center, you know, the two extremes. And then the Communist Party had a lot to do with breaking them up. They played their usual role. I'm not a liker of the Communist Party. You have to read the history of Spain, which I have in this book. You have to understand the role they played in the Spanish Revolution, and understand their treachery. And also, by the way, in the Russian Revolution, I left out here, I'm sorry, but my father's great mentor, I have to mention this and then I'll shut up, was a man named Grigory Petrovich Maximov. He was a Russian revolutionary who escaped with his life from Lenin. And he settled in Chicago. My father lived in Chicago for a number of years. And he really introduced him to the world of literature, of books, of the intellect. And he looked upon Maximov as his mentor. And he describes Lenin. I have in the book people who knew Lenin personally. I write about them in this book. This book is a good book, not because I wrote it. I'm proud of it. But it is it's an interesting book. It really is. If there were different kinds of, I was describing, I love the publisher. That's why AK Press, they're an anarchist publisher, and they do things in a communal way, and they share all the labors. The editor, Charles Weigel, was tremendous. The problem is that it's a small publisher, and it doesn't get out to the mainstream. It's not their fault. They know this. I'm not saying anything they don't know. But you might read some of the reviews. You go on the internet and look at some of the reviews, and you'll see for yourself what they say. Any other questions? I'm sorry I didn't answer it.
No, that actually is very much spoke to it.
We're pretty much out of time here. I don't want to keep these guys.
No, you're tired, I can see.
Promise them.
I get round up. You're lucky about my students.
No, this is good. This is what we brought you here for.
Yeah,
is,
no, this is
is to
great.
ramble. You know, it can be organized in the book. We get the straight version from you.
Yeah.
Well, I have people here who fought in Spain. I knew them very well. I knew them personally close to Federico Arcos. You ever hear of him? Died recently. At age 94, he became an auto worker in Windsor, Ontario. He fought in the barricade in Barcelona. He went back in. Can you imagine? In the underground. Abel Paz is one of the great historians of the Spanish Revolution. He's written huge numbers of books. His real name is Diego Camacho, Spaniard. I write about him here. Fantastic character. 16 years old, fighting in Spain. Refugee into Spain, into France. You know, they had to escape. Hundreds of thousands, camps. The Vichy government, then Hitler, they take him as a laborer. He built the wall on the Atlantic wall that Hitler had. He was a laborer. Meanwhile, he's in the underground. He gets out. He goes back into Spain in the underground. They capture him. He does 11 years in the Franco prison. That ain't fun. You know what he says to me? He says, he says, it made me a better man.
That's character.
There's certain kinds of people who, yeah, well, I don't think he would recommend it for everybody.
Yeah.
I don't know if I should have said to him, you want to go back? But he was a
Revolutionary.
he's written volumes. He wrote a huge volume on Peruti, and he's like prolix writer. He died recently, a few years ago. I have all these characters that come in and out of the book. I knew, my father knew one man who knew Mao Zedong. Went to school with him. They were students together. Would you believe it? Fantastic. The people you read, the people who come and go. And, so I didn't want to write it. I had my friend Herb Miller. He was my best friend. He died, and he used to call me up. He was a professor of English, and he called me up. He said, "You son of a bitch, what time is it?" I say, "It's 8 in the morning." Get on the fucking typewriter. I says, "I don't want." He says, "You have to." He loved my father. Herb loved. He called my father a 19th century man, and that was a compliment because of his values and his way of life. And he would make me write. He says, "You have to write about your father. You must." Because he says, you can't lose all this. It has to get down in print.
How long did this take you to write?
A couple of years. I didn't write it regularly. I took breaks. If I wasn't in the right mood, you'll see the book has a certain tone, and if I couldn't replicate that tone, I would not write. I know I'm not a professional, so this is what I did. I dedicated it to Herb. I said to my friend Herb Miller, and I quote Einstein. You remember him. So what happened is that Einstein had a friend named Bessel, who died 2 weeks before Einstein did, something like this. It was really both going to die. And Einstein wrote a letter to Bessel's family. So there's this beautiful quote. It says, "Now he has departed from the strange world a little ahead of me. That means nothing. People like us who believe in physics know that the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion." That beautiful quote?
Yeah.
Poetic quote. So I loved Herb so much that I put that in. because he died before the book was finished. So, but the irony of that, it's only a stubbornly persistent delusion, Einstein. So, there's no, it's only an illusion. Here's a man spent his whole time trying to figure out what time was, and he says it's an illusion. If it's an illusion, then what is the purpose of his life? He was a very subtle man. There was a fellow who wrote a biography and called him Subtle as the Lord, about Einstein. His thought processes were incredibly subtle. Of course, that's why he invented relativity. But anyway, thank you very much, and I appreciate it.